Hi, it's great to be back in this studio, and looking forward to talking a bit about the Jimi Hendrix album, giving a bit of insight into how it all came about. It took a little bit of time for me to really get into Jimi Hendrix, but when I did, it's never left me, and I just love his playing to bits. I used to go to school listening to Jimi Hendrix on my Sony Walkman, and it was the soundtrack to my day. It was Red House Blues. It was All Along the Watchtower, Axis Boulder's Love. Fantastic albums that just came out of his inspiration. And the amazing thing about Jimi Hendrix is he was only around for 4 years. Since 1967 was the first album. Are You Experienced? Just a brilliant album. That's the one with Hey Joe, Foxy Lady, Purple Haze. So meteoric rise from nothing, and then 4 years later he was dead. Absolutely. So everything that we know and his whole influence on music, he's still the greatest guitarist ever. It was only 4 years of his life, and so tragic. So I feel humbled to be able to try and produce some of that material just because I love it, and I love him.
And so castles made of sand fall in the sea eventually.
It's love, it's soul. He infused crazy rock overtones with the deepest soul. And his craftsmanship, his songwriting craftsmanship, was so poetic and so romantic. So it's such a melange of all these different styles, infused with his unique passion.
On this lonesome place.
I met Eddie Kramer, who was the producer and engineer of a lot of the Hendrix recordings. And he was talking about the process of recording and how Jimi was always so organised when he came into the studio. He knew exactly what he wanted. He would talk in terms of colours, and he would do things like say, can you make that sound like a sunset? or I want that reverb to be like the ocean. And Eddie would translate, and they would start experimenting. There were just no rules. It just evolved, pushing the boundaries, just like the Beatles did, on 4-track tape. It was really pioneering stuff. So I love it, and I always since I was a teenager. It's the trip, which is psychedelic. It's the Beatles. It's Pink Floyd. It's Prince. It's all these Stones. It's rebellion. He spoke to me from his soul, from his heart. He spoke to a whole generation.
Through the clouds.
What a crazy dresser he was. What a crazy, all kind of colours that just clash, but it didn't matter. And then on stage, such a vibrant, vibey guy with his guitar, and that's how I want to play. I can't try and be like Hendrix because I'll fail. I can only be like me. But once we get on stage, and obviously the material is, songwriting wise, inspired by all those great writers, Paul McCartney, Lennon, and performance wise, whether it's Hendrix or James Brown or Marvin Gaye, it's all in there. So I'm just what I am, and I just want to share it. I mean, as a guitarist, Jimi was the greatest blues guitarist. John Lee Hooker and Elmore James and T-Bone Walker, all these guys that Jimi was listening to. Jimi's got another take on it though, which is far more wild and untamed, and that's the rock edge that I love. So it's combining blues with rock, but foremost he was a blues guitarist, and that's why I fell in love with him to start with. Red House, Hear My Train Coming, just beautiful hark back to the original blues stuff. He's still the greatest, and 50 years on, from almost 50 years since he died, there's no one like Jimi Hendrix. So I think young people can feel the energy, they can feel the passion, they can feel the rebellion, and just the sheer sex of it. It's just pure drive, and it's limitless. He wasn't held back. So that's true. It's kind of there's a soul and there's a truth to what Jimmy did. There's no bullshit. It was all about the music. I was talking with a friend of mine, great producer, engineer, Niccolo Panzarassa, and he was saying how much he'd love to do a Jimi Hendrix recording. And so we started talking about it. I thought, why not? It'd be fantastic. Guys, this is Niccolo. How you doing, all right?
Good.
Yeah, so we were talking about doing a Hendrix album. Not an album, we were talking about doing like 2 or 3 tracks. Then I had to go through and we had the possibility to use a decent studio and make a go of it. So as I was thinking about the tracks, I couldn't whittle it down to 3 tracks. So I told Niccolo, listen, I've got 9 tracks. And he was like, don't be crazy, we've only got 1 day. We're 1 day recording. I just thought, no, I want to try and do it. So we just did the best we could. Some of it's pretty rushed, some of it's pretty raw, but we did the best we could. We got the 9 tracks in, and that's good, because it means I just didn't have to throw away ones that I love too. And so we did that in 1 day recording, and that was the limitation. And then we had a day to do some overdubs.
Yeah.
And that was it. And just mix it quickly. And so it was high pressure stuff. The greatest challenge was to be able to play the flipping guitar. Man, listen, even trying to work out the parts. You know, I had to really listen hard. Some of them I already had done years ago, but it was a huge pressure, and I didn't rehearse enough. We had 1 rehearsal. I was wondering who I could do this with, and so I phoned up and I auditioned a few guys, but I ended up phoning up an old friend of mine, Marcel Stranis, who's a great bass player. And we were listening to this stuff when we were teenagers together, and he knows it inside out. He's a superb player. So he was totally up for it. And I needed a drummer that was funky but rocky but jazzy. Mitch Mitchell is, to me, John Bonham and Mitch Mitchell, my favourite drummers of all time. And not easy to find a drummer that can capture that floaty feel, but pounding it in rock and being funky like a James Brown vibe. So I called up Mako Sakamoto, a really good friend of mine, and I was so thrilled he wanted to do it. We had 1 rehearsal. We had 1 rehearsal, like 4 hours. It wasn't enough, but hey, that's what we had. And then we went to the studio. So that's a tribute to them, because they were just so solid, and they really supported me. So really thrilled that they could do the album. I'm so sad that since we recorded recently, Mako has passed away, and it just really shocks me, especially when I see the footage or listen to these tracks. I mean, we're going to open up the multitracks in a minute, and you'll be able to hear his brilliance and what an incredible guy he was. He played with a lot of people, and a huge loss as a friend and as a musician. So I'm sorry to share that, but you know, it's in my heart, and I was really touched by. I can't believe we did this album before he passed away suddenly. Yeah. So this is to you, Mako, as well. Also, we were videoing the sessions, which we're releasing the videos, and so I had to think about, you know, what I'm wearing, stupid stuff like that, but as well as getting the songs right. So yeah, it was a big pressure and not much time. Clock was ticking. So I'm thrilled that we managed to do it in a day. It's just, yeah, how it should be, really. And in a way, that's the greatest challenge, is how to take some of these songs and make them mine, put your own feel into them. And I think on this album, I think I've managed to do that on a few of the tracks, but on many of them, I'm just trying to keep up, in all honesty. So let me know what you think. Well, I want to call the album with Love to Jimi, and I hope that he feels that humility, and he feels my spirit connected to his. And he might be turning in his grave. He might be having a laugh, or he might be going, "Hey man, this sounds cool." I hope so.